The alien princess trembled. She finally recognized the human who saved her as a royal. Guardian Part 1. Princess Valeth stood at the small window of the cargo ship and watched her world die. The planet below was covered in fire and smoke. Ships were falling from the sky like burning stars. Everything she had ever known was being destroyed. The Kathrani had come without warning. Their warships had appeared from nowhere and started killing everyone. The royal fleet tried to fight back, but it was not enough. The enemy was too strong, and too many. Her mother, the Empress, had grabbed her arm and pushed her toward the transport ship. There were tears in her mother's eyes, but her voice was strong. "You must live," the Empress had said. "You are the future of our people. Go now and do not look back." Valeth had wanted to stay and fight. She had wanted to die with her family if that was their fate. But her mother's guards had carried her onto the ship and sealed the door behind her. Now she was running away while her people burned. The cargo ship was old and slow. It was not built for carrying important people. It was built for carrying boxes and supplies. But it was the only ship that had escaped the attack. There were 47 survivors on board. Most of them were servants and minor nobles who had been lucky enough to be near the landing bay when the attack started. A few were guards, but they had no weapons. Everything had happened too fast. Valeth did not speak to any of them. She stood at the window and watched until her planet became a small dot of light. And then nothing at all. Among the survivors was a human. Valeth had noticed him before, back when her life was normal and she lived in the palace. He worked as a cargo handler, moving boxes from one place to another. His name was Daniel Price, and he was the most boring person she had ever seen. He was not tall or short. He was not fat or thin. His face was plain and forgettable. He wore simple worker clothes and kept his eyes down when important people walked past. He never spoke unless someone spoke to him first, and even then he only said a few words. Valeth had walked past him 100 times and never really looked at him. He was just another worker, invisible like the walls and floors. But now, trapped on this small ship with nothing to do, she found herself watching him. He sat in a corner by himself, eating a small meal from a metal container. His movements were slow and careful. He chewed each bite many times before swallowing. There was nothing special about him. Nothing at all. 3 days passed. The ship flew through empty space, trying to reach friendly territory. Everyone was scared and hungry. The food was running low. The water recycler was making strange noises. People were starting to argue and fight. Daniel Price did not argue or fight. He fixed the water recycler without being asked. He shared his food with a young child who was crying from hunger. He helped an old woman find a comfortable place to sleep. He did all of this quietly, without asking for thanks. Most people did not even notice. Valeth noticed. On the 4th day, the alarms started screaming. A Kathrani raider had found them. It was a small ship, built for hunting and killing. It moved toward them like a predator moving toward wounded prey. The captain's voice came through the speakers. His words were shaking with fear. "They are demanding we surrender," he said. "They know the princess is on board. They say they will kill everyone if we do not give her to them." Panic spread through the ship. Some people started crying. Others started praying to their gods. A few looked at Valeth with eyes that said they were thinking about handing her over. Valeth stood tall and kept her face calm, but inside she was terrified. She knew what the Kathrani did to prisoners. Death would be a mercy compared to what waited for her. The enemy ship connected to their airlock. The sound of metal touching metal echoed through the corridor. Everyone backed away from the door, pressing themselves against the walls. Everyone except Daniel Price. He walked toward the airlock with that same slow, boring shuffle. He stood there with his hands at his sides, looking at the door like he was waiting for a delivery. "Get back, you fool," someone shouted at him. "They will kill you first." Daniel did not move. He did not even turn his head. The airlock opened with a hiss of air. 3 HFY soldiers stepped through, their plasma rifles raised and ready. They were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were black and empty like the space between stars. "Where's the princess?" the first soldier demanded. "Bring her to us now and we might let some of you live." Daniel Price moved. Valeth had never seen anything move so fast. One moment he was standing still like a statue. The next moment he was among the soldiers, like a ghost made of death. His hand shot out and hit the first soldier in the throat. The alien made a choking sound and fell. Before the body touched the ground, Daniel had already grabbed the second soldier's rifle and twisted it from his grip. He used the weapon like a club and broke the alien's skull with one swing. The third soldier tried to aim his rifle, but Daniel was already there. He caught the alien's arm and bent it the wrong way. Bones snapped like dry wood. The soldier screamed, but only for a moment. Daniel's other hand found the alien's neck and squeezed. 4 seconds. 3 dead soldiers. Daniel walked to the airlock controls. His fingers moved across the panel with perfect speed. The inner door sealed shut, and then the outer door opened. The remaining HFY soldiers, the ones still waiting to board, were sucked out into space. He closed the outer door and turned around. His face had not changed. There was no anger in his eyes, no excitement, no fear. He looked exactly like he had looked when he was eating his meal in the corner. The survivors stared at him with their mouths open. No one made a sound. Daniel walked toward Valeth. She wanted to step back, but her legs would not move. He stopped in front of her and bowed his head slightly. "Stay behind me, Your Highness," he said. His voice was quiet and calm. "More will come." Valeth trembled. But she was not trembling because of the HFY. She was trembling because she had finally seen something that should not exist. A human who moved like lightning and killed like a machine. A cargo handler who could destroy trained soldiers with his bare hands. What was he? What had she been walking past for all those months without seeing? Daniel turned away and walked toward the bridge. After a moment, Valeth followed him. She did not know what else to do. The boring cargo handler was gone. Something else had taken his place. And whatever it was the only thing standing between her and death. The alien princess trembled. She finally recognized the human who saved her as a royal. Guardian Part 2. The HFY raider ship was still attached to their vessel. Daniel walked to the bridge with long, steady steps. The survivors moved out of his way without being asked. They pressed themselves against the walls and watched him pass with wide eyes. Valeth followed close behind him. Her heart was still beating fast from what she had seen. 3 soldiers dead in 4 seconds. It did not seem possible. The bridge was small and crowded with old equipment. The captain was a middle-aged Sindari named Jaros, who had spent his life moving cargo between planets. He was not a warrior. He was not trained for combat. When Daniel walked in, the captain looked at him like he was looking at a ghost. "We need to separate from the enemy ship," Daniel said. His voice was calm and flat, like he was discussing the weather. "Can you do it?" Captain Jaros shook his head. They locked their docking clamps. "I cannot break free without tearing our hull apart." Daniel nodded once. "Move." The captain stepped away from the controls without argument. Daniel sat down and his fingers started moving across the panels. He pressed buttons and turned switches with perfect confidence. He did not hesitate or look confused. "You know how to fly a ship?" Valeth asked. "I know how to do many things, Your Highness." He did something complicated with the engines. The ship shook and groaned. Metal screamed against metal. Then, with a sudden lurch, they broke free. The HFY raider spun away into the darkness. its docking clamps still holding pieces of their hull. "We are losing air," Captain Jarrow said, looking at his instruments with fear. "The breach is too large. We have maybe 2 hours before the ship becomes uninhabitable." Daniel stood up. "Show me where the breach is." 20 minutes later, the breach was sealed. Daniel had used pieces of broken equipment and sheets of metal to patch the hole. His work was not pretty, but it was strong. The air stopped escaping. Captain Jarrows watched him with amazement. "How did you learn to do that?" "Practice," Daniel said. He wiped his hands on his worker clothes and walked away. For the next several days, Daniel became the true leader of the ship. No one elected him. No one gave him permission. He simply started giving orders, and everyone obeyed. He organized the food so that it would last longer. He created a schedule for sleeping so that someone was always watching for danger. He fixed 3 more problems with the ship systems that would have killed them all. He did everything without complaining. He did not ask for special treatment. He still slept in his corner like a common worker. But now everyone looked at him differently. Valith found herself watching him constantly. She tried to understand what he was, but nothing made sense. Cargo handlers did not fight like demons. They did not know how to fly ships and fix complex machines. They did not have that cold, empty look in their eyes. One evening, she found him alone on the observation deck. It was a small room with a large window that looked out at the stars. He stood there with his hands behind his back, staring into the darkness. "You are not what you appear to be," Valith said. He did not turn around. "No one is, Your Highness. Who trained you to fight like that?" "I have seen warriors from a dozen species. None of them move the way you move." "I trained myself," he said slowly. "And others trained me. It was a long time ago." "How long ago?" He did not answer. "At least tell me why you are here," Valith pressed. "A man with your skills does not become a cargo handler by accident. Why were you on my mother's staff?" Daniel finally turned to look at her. His eyes were strange. They looked old, much older than his face. There was weight in them, like he had seen terrible things and could not forget them. "I was doing my job," he said. "What job?" "Moving boxes?" A small smile touched his lips and disappeared. "Something like that." Before she could ask more questions, the ship's alarms screamed again. Daniel was running toward the bridge before the sound finished. Valith ran after him, her royal robes flowing behind her. A Kathrani hunter-killer had found them. It was bigger than the raider, faster than the raider, and armed with weapons that could turn their little cargo ship into dust. "We cannot outrun them," Captain Jarrow said. His voice was shaking. "We cannot outfight them. We are dead." Daniel pushed him aside and took the controls. His hands moved across the instruments with impossible speed. The ship lurched hard to the left, then spun in a direction that made Valith's stomach turn. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "Surviving." He flew the ship toward an asteroid field. The rocks were dense and jagged, spinning through space like teeth waiting to bite. No sane pilot would enter such a place. Daniel flew straight in. The ship twisted and turned between the asteroids. Rocks passed by the window so close that Valith could see the cracks in their surface. The hull screamed with stress. Warning lights flashed everywhere. Daniel's face never changed. His hands moved with perfect precision. He dodged asteroids that should have crushed them. He found paths that should not have existed. Behind them, the hunter-killer tried to follow. It was faster than their ship, but it was also bigger. The pilot could not match Daniel's impossible movements. One asteroid clipped its wing. Another smashed into its side. Then a massive rock caught it directly, and the hunter-killer exploded in a ball of fire. Daniel flew them out of the asteroid field and into clear space. He set a new course and stood up from the controls. Everyone on the bridge was staring at him. Captain Jaros had tears running down his face. One of the crew members had fainted. Valeth was gripping a support beam so hard that her fingers hurt. "We should reach the human colony of New Geneva in 6 days," Daniel said calmly. "I recommend everyone get some rest." He walked off the bridge like nothing had happened. Valeth found her voice after he left. "That was impossible," she whispered. "No one can fly like that. The reaction time alone would need to be 10 times faster than any normal being." Captain Jaros wiped his face with shaking hands. "I have been flying ships for 30 years, he said. "I have never seen anything like that. I did not even know it was possible." Valeth thought about Daniel's old eyes. She thought about the way he fought, the way he moved, the way he seemed to know things that no cargo handler should know. "What are you?" she whispered to the empty doorway. There was no answer. There was only the hum of the engines and the cold light of the stars. She would find out the truth. She had to find out the truth. Because whatever Daniel Price really was, she knew that her survival depended on understanding it. The quiet human with the boring face had saved them twice now. But Valeth could not shake the feeling that she was traveling with something far more dangerous than the enemies hunting her. She went to her small cabin and tried to sleep. But her dreams were filled with a man who moved like lightning and killed without feeling anything at all. The alien princess trembled. She finally recognized the human who saved her as a royal. Guardian Part 3, New Geneva, was a human colony world on the edge of known space. It was a place where refugees could find shelter and travelers could rest before continuing their journeys. The planet had green forests, blue oceans, and cities that mixed human and alien architecture in strange but beautiful ways. When their damaged cargo ship landed at the main spaceport, Valeth felt relief wash over her. They had survived. Against all odds, they had made it to safety. Daniel arranged everything. He spoke with port officials, secured temporary housing for all the survivors, and made sure everyone had food and medical care. He did all of this without asking for help or recognition. By the time Valeth realized what he was doing, it was already done. "How do you have so many connections here?" she asked him as they walked through the busy streets. "You are a cargo handler. You should not know anyone on this planet." "I have traveled a lot," Daniel said. His voice was calm as always. "You meet people along the way." It was not an answer, but Valeth knew she would not get a better one. Not yet. She left Daniel at the refugee center and made her way to a building she had visited once before, many years ago. It was the diplomatic residence of Ambassador Korath, an old friend of her mother. If anyone could help her understand what was happening, it was him. The ambassador was a very old Sindari with gray scales and clouded eyes. He had served the Empire for over 100 years. When Valeth was a child, he used to tell her stories about distant planets and ancient wars. He welcomed her with open arms and tears in his eyes. "I feared you were dead," he said, holding her hands in his. "I feared our entire line was lost. My mother made sure I escaped," Valeth said. "I do not know if she survived. She did." Korath's face brightened. "Word reached us yesterday. The Empress lives. She is leading the resistance from a hidden base. The war is not over." Valeth felt her heart lift with hope. Her mother was alive. Her people were still fighting. There was still a chance, but she had not come here only for news of the war. She had come for answers. "I need to ask you about something," she said carefully. "A human program. Something called the Guardian program." Ambassador Korath's face changed. The warmth in his eyes disappeared. He suddenly looked very old and very tired. "Where did you hear that name?" he asked quietly. "I sent a message to Sindari Intelligence. I asked them about a human who has been helping me." The response mentioned something called The Guardian Program. Classification Omega. Korath pulled his hands away from hers. He walked to a cabinet and poured himself a glass of dark liquid. His hands were shaking slightly. "That is not something we speak of lightly," he said. "It is not something we speak of at all." "I need to know," Valeth insisted. "This human saved my life. Twice. He killed soldiers with his bare hands. He flew through an asteroid field like it was nothing. He knows things that no cargo handler should know." "What is he?" Korath drank his entire glass in one swallow. Then he poured another. 200 years ago, he began slowly, humanity was dying. They were a young species, barely out of their home system. The Varic Empire decided they were a threat and launched an invasion. Valeth knew this history. Every species in the galaxy knew this history. The humans were outmatched, Korath continued. Their ships were weak. Their weapons were primitive. They lost battle after battle. Billions died. It seemed certain that humanity would be erased from the galaxy forever. But they survived, Valeth said. They won. Yes, they won. But do you know how? She shook her head. In their desperation, the humans created something new. Something terrible. Korath's voice dropped to almost a whisper. They took their finest warriors and made them into something more than human. They enhanced their bodies, their reflexes, their minds. They embedded combat programming directly into their cells. They extended their lifespans far beyond normal limits. Valeth felt cold. They created living weapons. They called them guardians. 100 soldiers who were worth more than entire armies. 100 warriors who could fight for centuries without growing old or weak. Korath looked at her with fear in his old eyes. The Guardians did not just defeat the Varic. They destroyed them. They burned the Varic homeworld to ash. They hunted down every ship, every base, every hiding place. When they were finished, the Varic Empire no longer existed. And after the war? And after the war? The Guardian program officially ended 150 years ago. The humans told the galaxy that the Guardians had retired or died. They said the program was too dangerous to continue. But that was a lie, Valeth said. It was not a question. Of course it was a lie. The Guardians were too valuable to discard. So they were hidden, reassigned, placed in positions where they could watch and protect without being noticed. Korath set down his glass with a trembling hand. They were sent to serve as invisible shields around important assets. Important people. People like a princess whose mother had signed a secret alliance treaty with Earth. Valeth felt the blood drain from her face. She thought about Daniel Price, the boring cargo handler who had worked in her mother's palace for months. The invisible man who no one ever noticed. My mother knew, she whispered. Your mother requested help when the intelligence reports started warning about a possible Kethrani invasion. Earth sent someone to protect you. Someone who could hide in plain sight until needed. A guardian. A guardian. Korath's voice was heavy with meaning. Princess, you must understand what this means. The man protecting you is not just a skilled fighter. He is a weapon created in humanity's darkest hour. He has lived for possibly 2 centuries. He has killed more enemies than you can imagine. He's not capable of fear, not capable of hesitation, and his only purpose is to keep you alive. Valeth stood up slowly. Her legs felt weak. Why did no one tell me? Because that is how the Guardians work. They protect from the shadows. They do not seek recognition or praise. Most of the people they guard never know they exist. But now I know. Now you know. Korath looked at her with something like sympathy. The question is, what will you do with that knowledge? Valeth did not have an answer. She thanked the ambassador and left his residence in a daze. The streets of New Geneva seemed different now. Everything seemed different. Daniel was waiting for her outside the refugee center. He stood in the shadows like he always did, watching without being seen. "You visited Ambassador Korath," he said. "It was not a question. You followed me. I am supposed to follow you. That is my job." Valeth looked at him with new eyes. She tried to see the ancient warrior behind the boring face. She tried to imagine him burning worlds and hunting enemies across the stars. "Why did you not tell me?" she asked. "Tell you what, Your Highness? What you are. What you really are." Daniel's expression did not change, but something shifted in his old eyes. Something that might have been sadness or loneliness or the weight of too many years. "Because knowing what I am changes how people see me," he said quietly. "And once that changes, it can never change back." He turned and walked toward the refugee center. Valeth watched him go. This human who was not really human anymore. This weapon who had chosen to hide himself behind a mask of nothing. She had wanted answers. Now she had them. But somehow, the truth only made everything more complicated. The alien princess trembled. She finally recognized the human who saved her as a royal guardian. Part 4. That night, Valeth could not sleep. She lay on her small bed in the refugee housing and stared at the ceiling. Her mind kept returning to the same questions over and over again. 200 years. Daniel might have been alive for 200 years. He might have fought in wars that ended before her grandmother was born. He might have killed more people than she could count. And all this time, he'd been hiding in her mother's palace, pretending to be a cargo handler. She needed to confront him. She needed to understand. Valeth got up and walked through the quiet hallways until she found Daniel's small room. It was barely larger than a closet. A guardian who had served humanity for centuries. And he slept in a space meant for storage. She knocked on the door. "Come in," his voice said from inside. He was sitting on the edge of his narrow bed, looking at something in his hands. When she entered, he put it away too quickly for her to see what it was. "Your Highness," he said. "Is something wrong?" "Yes, everything is wrong." Valeth closed the door behind her. "Did my mother buy your protection? Am I just a job to you? A mission?" Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he shook his head slowly. "Your mother requested assistance from Earth. They asked for volunteers among the Guardians still in service. I stepped forward. Why you? Because I read the intelligence reports about you." His voice was quiet but steady. "Your work with the Outer Rim refugees. Your speeches against the slave trade. The way you secretly funded resistance movements in territories occupied by enemy forces." Valeth was surprised. She had tried to keep those activities hidden from everyone, including her mother. "You knew about all that?" "Guardians know many things, Your Highness. We have access to information that most people never see." Daniel stood up and faced her directly. "I volunteered to protect you not because of your crown. I volunteered because of who you are. Because in 200 years, I have learned that crowns mean nothing. Character means everything." Valeth did not know how to respond. She had expected him to be cold, mechanical, a weapon following orders. Instead, he was talking about her character, her choices, her hidden work. "You chose to protect me," she said slowly. "It was your decision. Yes. And if you had not volunteered, if you had not been there when the Kethrani invaded, someone else would have been assigned. Or no one." Daniel's face was calm, but something flickered in his ancient eyes. "I am glad it was me." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Valeth asked a question that had been burning in her mind since she talked to Ambassador Korath. "How old are you really?" "Old enough that I've stopped counting." "That is not an answer. It is the only answer I can give. Some things are too heavy to carry in numbers. Before she could press further, the window exploded inward. Glass flew everywhere. 3 shapes burst through the opening, moving with terrible speed. Valeth saw gray skin, black eyes, and blades that gleamed in the dim light. Kethrani assassins. The best killers their empire could produce. They had bypassed every security system, every alarm, every guard. They had found her. Daniel moved. He grabbed Valeth and threw her behind him in one smooth motion. The first assassin's blade missed her head by inches. Daniel caught the assassin's arm, twisted it around, and snapped the bone. The assassin screamed. The second assassin attacked from the side. Daniel blocked the blade with his forearm. Blood sprayed from the cut, but he did not seem to notice. He punched the assassin in the throat and crushed its windpipe. The third assassin was faster than the others. It dodged Daniel's first strike and slashed at his face. He leaned back, but the blade still caught his cheek. Then he was inside the assassin's guard, his hands moving in a blur. 3 hits. The assassin's neck bent the wrong way, and it fell dead. 11 seconds. 3 elite killers destroyed, but the third assassin's blade had done more than cut his cheek. Daniel looked down at his side, where a deep wound was leaking dark blood. The blade was poisoned, he said calmly. He examined the cut like he was looking at a minor problem. Cathrax venom. Rare. Expensive. Very effective against humans. We need a doctor, Valeth said, reaching for her communication device. We need help right now. No. Daniel's hand caught her wrist with surprising gentleness. There is no antidote for Cathrax venom. Not on this planet. Probably not anywhere within a week's travel. Then what do? I can slow the poison in my body. My systems are designed to resist toxins. But I cannot stop it completely. He looked at her with those old, tired eyes. I have perhaps 6 hours. Maybe less. 6 hours is enough time to find something, Valeth insisted. There has to be a way? There is no way. But 6 hours is enough time to get you somewhere safe. There is a protected location on the northern part of this planet. Other humans there can take care of you until your mother's forces arrive. I am not leaving you to die alone. That is not your choice to make, Your Highness. Valeth felt anger rising in her chest. You do not get to decide that. You volunteered to protect me. You said you chose me. That means something. It has to mean something. Daniel blinked. For the first time since she had known him, he looked uncertain. Princess, my name is Valeth. If you are going to die for me, you can at least use my name. A strange expression crossed his face. It took her a moment to realize it was surprise. Real, genuine surprise. Valeth, he said slowly, like he was tasting the word. Why does my survival matter so much to you? I am a weapon. Weapons are meant to be used and discarded. That is our purpose. You are not a weapon. You are a person. You make choices. You have feelings, even if you try to hide them. You are not just a thing to be thrown away. She knelt beside him and pressed her hand against the wound in his side. The blood was hot against her skin. My mother sent you to protect me, she said. Now I am going to protect you. That is my choice. And you do not get to take it away from me. Daniel stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly something changed in his expression. The cold mask cracked, just a little. Behind it, she saw someone who had been alone for a very long time. Why? He asked, and his voice was almost a whisper. Because that is what guardians do, she said. They guard. But they do not have to do it alone. Not anymore. She pulled out her communication device and activated a signal she had never used before. It was a gift from her mother, given to her when she was young. An emergency beacon that would reach across the galaxy and summon help. Whatever happens, Valeth said, we face it together. Daniel looked at her with something that might have been wonder. Then he nodded slowly. Together, he repeated dot outside. The first lights of emergency vehicles were appearing in the distance. Help was coming. But whether it would arrive in time, neither of them knew. The alien princess trembled. She finally recognized the human who saved her as a royal guardian. Part 5. The emergency beacon worked faster than Valeth had ever imagined possible. Within 2 hours, a Sindari warship descended from orbit. It was the Righteous Dawn, one of her mother's personal fleet vessels. It had been searching for her since the invasion began, tracking her across half the galaxy. Soldiers poured out of the ship and secured the area. Medical teams rushed toward Daniel, who was sitting against the wall with his eyes closed and his breathing slow. The poison had spread through his body. His skin was pale and his hands were cold. "We need a specialist," Valeth told the ship's commander. "Someone who knows human biology. This is Kethrak's venom." The commander's face went pale. "Your Highness, Kethrak's venom is always fatal. There is no treatment. Find someone who can try." They carried Daniel to the medical bay of the warship. Valeth followed and refused to leave, even when the doctors suggested she should rest. She stood beside his bed and watched his vital signs on the monitors. The numbers kept getting worse. Then a woman pushed through the medical team. She was human, with gray hair and sharp eyes behind thick glasses. Her name was Dr. Lisa Howard, and she had spent 30 years studying the bodies of different species. "Let me see him," she said. Her voice was calm but commanding. The other doctors stepped aside. Lisa examined Daniel with quick, efficient movements. She looked at the wound, checked his blood, studied the monitors. "This is remarkable," she muttered to herself. "His cells are fighting the venom. I have never seen regeneration like this. Can you save him?" Valeth asked. "His body is already trying to save itself. The problem is that the poison is winning the race." Lisa looked at Valeth with serious eyes. "I need 12 hours. If I can support his system with the right treatments, his own body might be able to finish the job. Then do it. I need your permission to use experimental methods. Some of them are risky." "You have my permission," Valeth said without hesitation. "Do whatever you have to do." Those 12 hours were the longest of Valeth's life. She sat beside Daniel's bed and watched him fight his invisible enemy. His body shook with fever. His breath came in short, painful gasps. The monitors screamed warnings that the doctors kept silencing. Lisa worked without rest. She tried one treatment after another. Some helped. Some did nothing. Some made things worse before making them better. Valeth held Daniel's hand through all of it. She talked to him, even though she did not know if he could hear her. She told him about her childhood in the palace. She told him about her dreams for her people. She told him that he was not allowed to die. "You said you chose me," she whispered in the dark hours of the night. "You said my character mattered. Well, I am choosing you too. I am choosing to believe that you will survive this. So do not make me wrong." Somewhere around the 10th hour, Daniel's vital signs started to improve. His fever dropped. His breathing became steady. The monitors stopped screaming. Lisa leaned back in her chair and let out a long breath. "He's going to make it," she said. "I do not know how, but he is going to make it." Valeth felt tears running down her face. She did not try to stop them. When Daniel finally opened his eyes, she was still there beside him. He looked around the medical bay with confusion, then focused on her face. "You should have left," he said. His voice was rough and weak. "Guardians guard," she replied. "But they do not do it alone. Not anymore." He stared at her for a long moment. Then, for the first time since she had known him, Daniel Price smiled. It was a small smile, barely a movement of his lips. But it was real. "Thank you, Valeth," he said. She squeezed his hand. "Thank me when you are fully healed. We have a lot of work ahead of us." 3 months passed. The war against the Kethrani turned in favor of the Sindari. With help from Earth and several other allies, the Empress drove the invaders back from their territory. The enemy fleet was destroyed. The occupied worlds were liberated. And then the Empress died. It was not from battle wounds or enemy assassins. It was from exhaustion. She had pushed herself too hard for too long. Her heart simply stopped. Veleth became Empress on a cold morning, surrounded by the survivors of her people. The crown felt heavy on her head. The throne felt too large for her body. But she remembered her mother's words from that terrible day when everything began. "You are the future of our people." Her first act as Empress was something that shocked the entire galaxy. She called a special assembly of all the noble houses and foreign ambassadors. They gathered in the great hall of the temporary imperial palace, thousands of beings from dozens of species. They expected a speech about revenge against the Kethrani, or a promise of expansion, or a demand for reparations. Instead, Veleth announced a formal alliance with Earth, a treaty of mutual defense and cooperation that would bind the two civilizations together for generations. This alliance was made possible by a single human, she said. A man who chose to protect me when he could have walked away. A man who risked his life without asking for anything in return. Today, I honor his service with a new position in the imperial court. She turned to face Daniel, who stood at the side of the hall in his simple clothes. He looked uncomfortable with all the attention. 200 years of hiding in shadows, and now he was standing in front of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "Daniel Price," Veleth said. "Come forward." He walked to the throne with his usual calm steps. His face was blank, but Veleth could see something in his eyes. Something like wonder. Something like hope. "I hereby create the position of Royal Guardian," she announced. "This title has never existed in our empire before. It is borrowed from humanity's own traditions, from the program that created the man standing before you. The Royal Guardian serves as the personal protector of the Empress, with authority second only to the crown itself." She stood from her throne and walked down to face Daniel directly. "Daniel Price, I offer you this position, not as an order, not as a request, but as a choice. Will you accept?" The humans in the audience understood what this meant. The aliens would learn soon enough. An empress of one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations was offering a human the highest honor she could give. She was telling the universe that this single man, this weapon who had learned to be a person again, was worth more than armies. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he knelt on one knee, his head bowed. "I accept," he said. "I will guard you, your family, and your people for as long as I live." Veleth placed her hand on his shoulder. "Rise, Royal Guardian." He stood, and for the second time, he smiled. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. Every species heard about the human who had become the shield of an empress. Every military commander studied the reports and understood the message. Anyone who threatened the Sindari Empire would face more than warships and soldiers. They would face a guardian, a living weapon from humanity's darkest age, whose loyalty was absolute and whose abilities were beyond understanding. The Kethrani never attacked again. Some said they were afraid. Others said they were wise. Years later, when historians wrote about this period, they called it the beginning of a new era. An era where humans and Sindari stood together as brothers. An era of peace and prosperity that lasted for centuries. But Veleth remembered it differently. She remembered a boring cargo handler who turned out to be extraordinary. She remembered trembling when she realized what he truly was. She remembered holding his hand through the longest night of her life. She remembered choosing him, and every morning, when she woke up and saw Daniel standing guard outside her door, She knew that some choices changed everything. She had a guardian, and she would never tremble again. The end.